He woke up to absolute darkness. No light, no sound, only the weight of the earth pressing against his chest. At first, he thought it was a dream, one of those paralyzing nightmares where you can to move or scream. But then he tried to breathe, and dirt filled his mouth. Alex Tan was a geologist, 35 years old, working in a remote mining field in Indonesia. On that day, the ground beneath him cracked open after heavy rain. A sudden landslide swallowed the entire site. Everyone thought he was dead. But Alex was still alive, trapped 6 feet underground in a coffin made of earth. The first minutes were chaos. He thrashed, clawing at the mud, screaming until his throat tore. Then silence swallowed him. His own heartbeat was the only sound left. Deep, slow, terrifying. He realized that if he kept panicking, he'd die faster. He remembered something from his university lectures. Panic burns oxygen faster than anything else. So he closed his eyes and forced himself to count. 4 seconds in, 7 seconds out. Again and again, until his breathing slowed. He didn't know if it was hours or minutes later when he noticed a faint vibration above him. Maybe thunder, or maybe the rescue team. He couldn't move much, but he could feel a small air pocket near his face. That was his world now. A space barely big enough to turn his head, filled with damp soil and fading air. He used the only tool he had, the metal buckle from his belt. Slowly, carefully, he scraped the dirt upward, creating a tiny passage no wider than his wrist. Every handful of soil he moved risked collapsing the air pocket, but he had no choice. Each scrape was a heartbeat closer to life, or death. By the end of the first day, his throat burned. His lips were cracked and bleeding. He was suffocating, not from a lack of courage, but from a lack of air. He pressed his face against the cold mud, trying to feel moisture. Nothing, just dry clay and his own sweat. That's when a memory hit him. A survival lecture he once gave to his students. If you can't find water, create it. He realized that his breath and body heat could form condensation. So he pressed a small piece of his shirt against the dirt wall, then rubbed his belt buckle against it. Minutes later, droplets appeared, tiny, but real. He licked them carefully, feeling the cool metallic taste slide down his throat. It wasn't much, but it was enough to think straight again. Hours turned into a blur. His body ached. His muscles twitched from lack of oxygen. He could feel the poison of carbon dioxide creeping into his lungs. He knew what that meant. He was breathing his own death. But again, science gave him clarity. He remembered a simple fact. Carbon dioxide is heavier than oxygen. If he could dig a small tunnel upward, even the size of his fist, it might release some of the trapped gas. So with shaking hands, he dug, half blind, half delirious, punching through layers of earth until he felt a faint breeze touch his fingers. He wasn't sure if it was real, but that whisper of air gave him hope. Every 10 minutes, he fanned his hand through that narrow gap, pushing the stale air out. Each breath hurt less. Each moment felt possible. By the second night, the darkness wasn't silent anymore. He began hearing things, voices, footsteps, rain. He shouted, but no one answered. He wasn't sure if the sounds were real or his brain slowly dying. He drifted in and out of consciousness, talking to himself, imagining his students, his wife, his unborn daughter. He promised them he'd come back. On the morning of the third day, he could barely move. His body was shutting down. His mind floated somewhere between life and death, but one thought kept repeating, "Stay awake, stay alive." He began tapping the metal buckle against the dirt wall, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. He didn't know that above him, rescuers had returned after detecting heat under the rubble. They used a thermal drone to scan the area, and a faint shape appeared, moving, still warm. The rescuers began digging again, inch by inch. It took them 4 hours to break through. When the first beam of light pierced the darkness, Alex thought he was hallucinating again. Then he heard a voice shout, "We found him!" They pulled him out, eyes sunken, skin pale, heartbeat barely 30 beats per minute. He had been underground for 72 hours. He survived with no food, almost no water, and a mind that refused to give up. When reporters asked him how he made it, he smiled weakly and whispered, "I remembered my own lecture." He later explained that science didn't just give him information, it gave him order in chaos. He understood his body, his breath, the physics of air and soil. He wasn't stronger than anyone else. He was simply calm enough to think when everyone else would panic. Months later, Alex returned to teaching. He brought with him the same belt buckle that had saved his life. He held it up to his students and said, "This isn't a tool. It's proof that knowledge is survival." He told them about fear, how it doesn't just kill by panic, but by silence. How people die not because the world turns against them, but because they forget how it works. He paused and looked at them, eyes still carrying the memory of the earth pressing down. If you ever find yourself buried, in fear, in doubt, in darkness, remember this. Stay curious. Science is not just for the lab. It's for moments when everything is falling apart. He ended the lecture quietly. No dramatic tone, no slow music, just the sound of students holding their breath. Alex Tan's story is now studied in survival psychology classes across Asia. Experts say his case proves that knowledge of basic physics and physiology can increase survival odds by 70%. But to Alex, it wasn't about statistics. It was about choice. He said, "I could have prayed, screamed, or surrendered, but I chose to calculate." That's what kept him alive. Not faith, not luck, but science, and the will to use it when it mattered most. So the next time you feel trapped, when the world around you is closing in, remember Alex. Breathe slowly. Think clearly. Because survival isn't magic. It's logic, applied when everything else is gone.